Why did she still come here every day if she wasn't allowed to fly? The afternoon heat shimmered across the Cumberland tarmac, the air thick with jet fuel and waiting. Captain Jennifer Carmichael sat on the same bench she'd sat on for the last 6 months, outside Hangar 7, facing an aircraft she wasn't supposed to touch. Her flight suit hung open to her waist, gray tank top damp at the collar. There was a pale scar tracing across her collarbone, just visible in the sunlight. A reminder of the day the bird struck her canopy and nearly ended her career before it began. They said she'd been lucky. She didn't feel lucky. Not that day, not now. Thunderbolt 68 sat 30 meters away under the half-shade of the hangar roof, her A-10, her bird, grounded like her. Paint chipped, tires chalked, canopy filmed with dust. Even from here, she could see the faint dullness of metal that hadn't felt sky in months. They stopped maintaining it properly the same week they took her wings. Easier to let the plane die than admit they might have been wrong about her. The bench creaked as she shifted, eyes still on the warthog. Somewhere on base, a siren wailed faintly and went silent again. Routine drill, probably, or something else. Her mind cataloged every sound automatically, the way pilots do when they can't stop being pilots. She told herself she was here to move on, to let it go. But deep down she knew she was waiting for something. Maybe for them to admit they needed her again. Maybe for the world to prove she'd been right. Maybe just for the universe to give her one more chance to fly. A young crew chief walked past, uniform streaked with grease, maybe 21 at most. He didn't stop, didn't even look at her. But as he passed, he muttered 2 words under his breath, soft enough for deniability, loud enough for her to hear. Training accident. She froze, her spine straightened. Training accident meant something. It meant men down. It meant pilots hurt, aircraft lost, people dying somewhere while everyone else hesitated behind procedure. By the time her brain caught up, her body was already moving. She stood, zipped up her flight suit, started across the tarmac, boots striking concrete with the muscle memory of purpose. That was how pilots walked when they meant it, shoulders forward, eyes locked, every step part of a mission no one else had yet approved. Chief Master Sergeant Gloria Hutchkins saw her coming. Gloria was 55, skin weathered from jet wash and decades of sun. Her hands were scarred, her eyes sharper than radar. For a second those eyes widened. Then her hand twitched toward the radio on her hip. She hesitated. Because everyone on this base knew who Jen Carmichael was, the pilot who'd broken formation to pull 3 Army scouts off a mountainside after their helicopter went down. The one who saved 3 lives and destroyed a $1 million drone doing it. The one they grounded, pending psychological evaluation, because courage made the wrong people nervous. Gloria's hand dropped from the radio. She said nothing, just watched as Jen crossed the final stretch of tarmac toward Thunderbolt 68. The aircraft looked like it had been waiting too, dust dulling the gray skin. Stencils faded, maintenance panels showing neglect. Jen reached up and ran her hand along the fuselage, feeling warmth baked in by Tennessee sun. "Ma'am, you're not cleared," Gloria began. Jen didn't answer. She was already climbing the ladder. The cockpit smelled the same, hydraulic fluid, worn leather, faint metal tang of oil. Home. Her hands moved by themselves. Master switch, battery, APU start. The warthog groaned awake, slow, reluctant, like something dragged from a long sleep. Diagnostics scrolled across her heads-up display. Fuel 68%, hydraulics yellow, 1 generator weak, guns green. Good enough. Inside the Flight Operations Center, chaos hummed behind glass walls. Radio chatter overlapped. Grid coordinates, medevac requests, jargon stacked over fear. Colonel Richard Holloway stood in the center of it all, tall and gray at the temples, jaw locked tight enough to break teeth. He believed in rules. Rules made order. Order saved lives. That was the creed he lived by. and the same creed that now had 19 Army Rangers pinned down in a canyon no aircraft could reach. "Status on Viper Actual?" he asked. Lieutenant Colonel David Fisher looked up from his monitor. "Last transmission 4 minutes ago, sir. They're down to under 100 rounds per man. Multiple wounded requesting immediate extraction. Location grid, Blackwater Canyon." The room went still. Someone muttered it under their breath. "The graveyard." Holloway's jaw flexed once. "Available rotary assets." Major Larry Dixon didn't need to check. 2 Blackhawks at Chapman, 1 Chinook here. The Apache already tried, turned back. Canyon's too narrow, too steep. They took fire from both ridgelines. One's got hydraulic damage. "Get the Chinook airborne. Coordinate with." "Sir," Dixon's tone was careful. "You know what happened last time we sent heavy rotary into Blackwater." "We lost a Pave Hawk," Holloway finished for him. 8 crew. "Yes, sir. That canyon is a natural kill box. Every approach exposes the aircraft for 90 seconds minimum." "Major," Holloway said quietly, 19 Americans are dying in that canyon. We don't abandon them." Dixon hesitated. He didn't disagree. He just didn't see how to make the math work. Across the room, Specialist Kayla Jensen monitored comms. She was 23, new to the base, still learning how to hide the weight of what she heard. For the last 2 hours she'd been listening to Viper Actual's transmissions degrade, first organized, then desperate, then static between screams and silence. A new alert blinked on her screen. "Unauthorized engine start," she said softly. "Hangar 7. Heads turned." "Aircraft identification," Holloway snapped. Her fingers flew over the keyboard. She read the tail number and her voice faltered. "Thunderbolt 68, A-10 Warthog, tail Alpha 479er." Silence spread like a concussion wave. Everyone knew that tail number. Holloway's voice went deadly calm. "Who authorized this?" "No one, sir. No flight plan filed. No clearance requested. Aircraft is powering up without authorization." Dixon's eyes closed for half a second. He didn't need to guess. "Carmichael," he whispered. "Get me tower," Holloway ordered. In the control tower, Airman Ethan Ross stared through the glass at the moving shape of Thunderbolt 68 rolling toward the runway. No clearance, no call sign, just motion. Inevitable, heavy, alive. "Tower, who cleared that Warthog for taxi?" Ross keyed his mic, voice trembling. "Sir, negative clearance given. Aircraft is moving without authorization. Thunderbolt 68, you are not cleared for taxi. Return to Hangar 7 immediately." No response. "Thunderbolt 68, acknowledge. This is a direct order." Still nothing. Ross watched as the Warthog reached the threshold, turned, lined up on the center line. "Sir, she's taking the active." "Scramble security, block the—" Too late. Thunderbolt 68 surged forward, throttles wide. The nose lifted, wheels left the ground, and the Warthog clawed skyward like a starving thing set free. The tower windows rattled from the roar. Inside the cockpit, G-forces pressed Jen back into the seat. The radio crackled with threats of court-martial, demands to turn around, promises of punishment. She ignored all of it. They'd already taken everything that mattered. What more could they take? 42 kilometers east, Blackwater Canyon. That's where she was heading. She dropped to 2,000 feet, leveled, and scanned the horizon. The ridgeline was a jagged scar against the sky. Somewhere down there, 19 men were running out of time. Her headset crackled again. Holloway's voice this time, low, dangerous, personal. "Carmichael, turn around. That's not a request." She didn't answer. "Captain, you are violating direct orders. If you continue, there will be consequences." Jen keyed the mic once. "There already were, sir." Then she switched frequencies, cut him off. Down in the canyon, Lieutenant Jason Daniels pressed his back against a boulder slick with someone else's blood. His own hands shook from adrenaline and exhaustion. 11 years Army, 7 as a ranger. He survived IEDs, raids, and ambushes that should have killed him. But this was geometry. No courage could outfight that. The canyon walls rose 400 feet straight up. Fire came from 3 sides. 2 men were dead. 4 more were bleeding out. Ammo low enough to count in heartbeats. His radio operator, Staff Sergeant Trevor Mills, crouched beside him. LT, we're down to 38 rounds per man. Jason did the math in his head. At their current rate of fire, 15 minutes, then knives, then nothing. Corporal Vincent Hayes worked 10 feet away, hands deep in a wound that should have been in an operating room. The kid on the ground, Private Marcus Webb, 21, first deployment, was fatting fast. "Stay with me, Marcus," Hayes said softly, voice level like routine maintenance instead of combat medicine. "You're fine, just a scratch." "Can't breathe right, Doc." "That's the trauma talking, you're fine." The lie was for both of them. Above the northern ridge, a man watched through binoculars. Not uniformed, local militia, patient. They'd waited for this patrol to walk right into their trap. No sophistication, just timing, terrain, and cruelty. Jason wiped blood from his face with a trembling hand. He thought about his twin girls in Georgia, maybe watching cartoons right now. Thought about the letter his wife would get if he didn't make it home. And somewhere above the roar of gunfire, he thought he heard something else. Distant thunder, low and steady. It wasn't weather. He lifted his head, squinting toward the western horizon. Sunlight glared off something metallic, moving fast. For a second, he thought he was hallucinating. Then the radio crackled, faint under the static. "Viper Actual, this is Reaper. I'm 90 seconds out." Jason blinked. He knew that voice. "Say again." "Reaper, 90 seconds." Someone beside him shouted, "Is that Carmichael?" Jason keyed the mic. "Reaper, be advised, canyon is extremely hot. Multiple hostile positions on ridgelines. 2 helicopters aborted earlier. This is not a safe approach." A pause, then her voice, calm, sharp, certain. "Viper, nothing safe about any of this. Tell me where you need the support." He stared upward, half smiling for the first time in hours. "Northern ridge, 50 meters above us. Heavy concentration, we're pinned." "Copy, going silent. Watch for the show." In the operations center, Kayla Jensen stared at her monitor. "Sir, Thunderbolt 68's dropped off radar." "She's below coverage," Holloway said quietly. "Should I keep the channel open?" "If she calls, answer. Otherwise, we wait." Major Dixon crossed his arms, watching the live drone feed of the canyon entrance. "She's either the bravest pilot I've ever seen," he murmured, "or the most reckless." Holloway's eyes didn't leave the screen. Maybe both. The canyon swallowed her whole. Shadows climbed the cockpit walls, altimeter screaming, airspeed bleeding. 300 feet above the floor, 80 feet from the rock walls on either side. No room for error, no second chances. Her breathing slowed, hands loose on the stick. Red's voice echoed in her head from years ago. "You choke the stick, you choke the plane." "Relax your grip," he used to say. "The A-10's not a fighter jet, it's a survivor. Let it do what it was born to do." She eased her hands. The ride smoothed out. The canyon twisted left and she banked with it, scraping the wind with wingtips close enough to feel it bite. The radio warning shrieked, "Missile lock." She saw the smoke trails a second later, 3 rockets rising from the eastern ridge. Jen jinked right hard, 2 streaked past, the third kept coming. She popped flares. The sky exploded behind her, heat and shrapnel chewing the air. The aircraft shuddered, alarms flashing red across her panel. Right stabilizer damaged, still flying. Good enough. And then she saw them. Tiny shapes scattered across broken stone, rifles flashing in desperate rhythm. Rangers. And higher on the ridge, muzzle flares, dark figures entrenched. She lined up, dropped her nose 4 degrees. The GAU-8 Avenger spun to life beneath her, a mechanical growl that became a living scream. She squeezed the trigger. BRRRT. The sound wasn't just noise. It was history, fury, and salvation rolled into one. The entire aircraft vibrated from recoil. Rocks shattered. The ridge vanished under a storm of 30 fire. 2 seconds, 78 rounds. Silence. Then she pulled up, skimming the canyon wall by 6 feet. Below, Jason Daniels watched the ridge disintegrate. Dust and debris rain like ash. Holy, one ranger started. "Keep working," Jason snapped, but even his voice carried something close to awe. Hayes looked up from Webb's body, eyes wide. "That Carmichael." "Yeah," another said, half grinning through dirt and fear. "She's insane." "Nah," Hayes answered, "she's ours." And for the first time that day, the men of Viper Company believed they might live. Because above them, somewhere between the walls of death and the open sky, one grounded pilot had decided that following rules wasn't the same as keeping faith. And as her A-10 banked through the shadows, lining up for another run, the sound that echoed through Blackwater Canyon wasn't just gunfire. It was defiance. And it was hope roaring on wings of steel. What makes a person go back into the storm that already broke them? 6 months earlier, the briefing room at Cumberland Air Force Base felt like a courtroom pretending to be a conference. 3 officers sat across from her: Lieutenant Colonel Fisher, Major Dixon, Captain Monica Hartwell, the base psychologist. Colonel Holloway stood at the head of the table, arms folded, every line in his posture reading authority. "Let's review the events of November 7th, he began. Jen Carmichael sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, face neutral, the kind of stillness that isn't calm, it's survival. "You were flying close air support for a reconnaissance patrol, Apache Company, 3rd Battalion. They hit an IED, multiple casualties. Command ordered them to fall back to Checkpoint Delta, 8 kilometers through hostile territory. You were instructed to provide overhead cover. Correct?" "Yes, sir." "Instead," Holloway said, "you landed your aircraft in an active combat zone." The words hung in the air like smoke. "You loaded 3 critically wounded soldiers into the equipment bay, space not designed for passengers, not designed for anything except cargo, then took off under fire. Is that accurate?" "Yes, sir." "Do you understand why that was problematic?" Jen met his eyes. "Those 3 soldiers would have died, sir. Medevac was 40 minutes out. They had maybe 10. "The math was simple," she added softly. "The math," Holloway echoed, his tone sharpening. "The math doesn't account for the Reaper drone you forced off station to cover your landing, the drone that later crashed due to fuel exhaustion. It doesn't account for the F-16 diverted from its mission to cover your withdrawal. It doesn't account for the chaos you created when you went off script." "Those 3 soldiers are alive," she said quietly. "And you violated direct orders," he fired back. "Endangered your aircraft, disrupted an entire operational theater. We have rules for reasons, Captain." Hartwell's voice broke the tension, careful, measured. "Captain Carmichael, help us understand. What were you thinking when you chose to land?" Jen's reply came slow, deliberate. "I was thinking about 3 men bleeding to death while we debated procedures. I was thinking my oath was to defend, not to orbit overhead and watch them die because the timeline didn't work out." Fisher's voice was gentle but firm. "Your oath also includes following lawful orders." She didn't flinch. "And when those orders conflict with saving lives, I have to make a choice." "That's not your choice to make," Holloway cut in. "You're a captain, not a general. You follow orders, period." Her answer came quiet, even when following orders means people die unnecessarily. The room went silent. Finally, Holloway said, "You're grounded, effective immediately, pending psychological evaluation." Yes, sir. She stood, saluted, and walked out without looking back. Behind her, she heard Hartwell's voice, low, almost pleading. Sir, with respect, what she did saved 3 lives. The families. The families don't make operational decisions, Doctor. I do. And I won't have pilots who think rules are optional. That was the day they took her wings. And that was the day she started spending her afternoons sitting outside Hangar 7, watching the plane she wasn't allowed to fly. Back in the present in the operations center, Holloway stared at the radar feed that had just gone blank. Thunderbolt 68, off scope. Somewhere below radar coverage, a pilot he'd grounded was flying straight into hell. Captain Brett Reynolds stormed in, helmet under his arm, face red from fury and flight line sun. One of their best A-10 drivers, once Jen's closest friend. Sir, permission to intercept Carmichael, he said, already knowing the answer. Force her to turn back. Negative, Holloway replied. Reynolds blinked. Negative. If she's going in anyway, we're not pulling resources to stop her. If she clears a path, I want extraction birds ready. Hold them 20 kilometers out until she calls it safe. Sir, she's violating orders. She's attempting to save 19 men, Holloway interrupted. His tone cracked just slightly. Or dying trying. Either way, Captain, it's out of my hands now. Reynolds clenched his jaw, turned on his heel, and walked out before his temper said something his career couldn't survive. Dixon watched him go. He's angry. Holloway's eyes stayed on the empty radar. He cares. Inside the canyon, Jen's world narrowed to cockpit glass and stone walls streaked with shadow. The radio hissed. Reaper, this is Red 1. Her breath caught. Red. Go ahead, she said. You're heading into a box canyon 2 clicks wide at the mouth, narrows to 60 feet in places. Wingspans 57.6. You know what that means. I know, Red. Then you know what you're attempting is suicide. 19 Rangers don't have another option. Silence. For a moment, she thought the transmission had cut. Then, you remember what I taught you about impossible approaches. Her lips curved faintly. Fly low, trust the bird, don't think too much. Good. And Carmichael. Yeah. If you're gonna do something stupid, do it fast. Red almost laughed, almost. Then the channel went quiet. She took one long breath, held it, let it out slow. Let's dance, she whispered to the machine. The canyon walls closed around her like the jaws of a trap. At the operations center, the drone feed flickered. Thermal imagery of heat blooms in the basin, flashes of muzzle fire. 19 dots on the canyon floor. She's below radar, Kayla said, but we're still reading weapons signatures. She's engaging, Dixon muttered. God help her. Down below, Jason Daniels crouched behind cover, rifle hot against his palms. The first gun run had shattered the northern ridge. The sound still echoed off the canyon walls. Then he heard it again. BRRRT. Dust, fire, rocks splintering into clouds. The eastern slope collapsed under the Warthog's second pass. Rangers yelled, cheered, ducked. For the first time since dawn, the sound of enemy fire wasn't constant. It was chaos up there now. Reaper, northern ridge neutralized, eastern clear, southern outcrop still active, Jason radioed. Copy, came her voice, calm, controlled, making another pass. She banked toward the southern outcrop, and the world lit up with warning tones. Multiple locks, radar-guided heat seekers. Her threat system screamed. 7 missiles launched almost simultaneously. She dumped every countermeasure she had, flares, chaff, everything. The sky turned white behind her. 5 of the missiles took the bait. 1 veered wide, 1 didn't. Jen pulled hard into a climb, every muscle braced. G-forces crushed her into the seat. The missile followed, closing fast, then overshot, unable to match her turn. It hit the canyon wall behind her. The shockwave slammed the A-10 like a giant hand, rattling teeth, popping seams. "Still here," she muttered, half to herself, half to the machine. Both engines screamed in protest. Temperatures climbing, hydraulics fluctuating. She ignored it. Below, Jason waved his team forward. "Move now, while she's got their heads down." They ran, dragging wounded, Webb limp in Hayes's arms. "Stay with me, kid," Hayes grunted. "We're getting you out." "Did you see her?" Webb whispered. "Did you see?" "Yeah," Hayes said, forcing a grin. "Now shut up and let me carry you." In the operations center, Holloway leaned closer to the display. "Extraction birds inbound." "ETA 6 minutes," Dixon said. "Tell them to hold until she clears the LZ." He hesitated, then added softly, "if she's still alive." In the canyon, Jen circled high, eyes scanning. Eastern slope quiet, northern ridge silent ruin, southern outcrop one last threat. "Reaper, this is Cumberland Actual," Holloway's voice crackled. "Extraction inbound 6 minutes. Can you hold?" She checked her gauges. Fuel 53%, hydraulics yellow, generator still weak. "I can hold," she said. But she wasn't sure she believed it. 6 minutes felt like 6 hours. Her A-10 limped in lazy circles, one eye on the canyon, the other on the warning spreading across her panel like infection. Down below, the Rangers reached a cluster of rocks offering better cover. Hayes worked on Webb. Mills scanned through his rifle scope. "LT," he said quietly. "East Ridge 200 meters. They're setting something up, looks heavy." Jason moved beside him, looked through the scope. His stomach dropped. "DSHK, 51 caliber, tripod mount. They're setting up to cut off the exfil." "How long till it's operational?" 3 minutes, maybe 4. Jason keyed the radio. "Reaper, hostiles emplacing heavy weapon East Ridge 200 meters from our position. They're setting up to cut off extraction." "Copy." Jen rolled right, banking hard toward the ridge. She spotted them, 4 men working methodically, connecting feed belts, sighting angles. She lined up for a gun run. Before she could fire, her threat warning screamed again. Another missile. She jinked left, narrowly avoiding impact. The DSHK crew opened up immediately, the heavy weapon walking fire across the sky, bright orange tracers slicing past her canopy. Rounds pinged against armor. The A-10 shuddered under impact. Left aileron sluggish, port fuel tank leaking fast. "Fuel 47% and dropping," she muttered. "Climb, reset, reattack." She pushed the throttles. The engines howled. At Cumberland, the operations room pulsed with tension. Intelligence officer Sylvia Patterson studied intercepted radio chatter. "They're calling in reinforcements from the north. Dozen more fighters, maybe 20 minutes out." "Extraction birds arrive in 4, Dixon said grimly. "Loading time another 5, that's tight." Holloway's voice hardened. "Then we move now. All extraction birds cleared hot." 2 Blackhawks and a Chinook broke formation and dove toward the canyon. Captain Angela Morrison gripped the cyclic tighter than she should have. Her co-pilot, Chief Warrant Officer Tucker, glanced over. "You ever fly into something this tight?" she asked. "Afghanistan," he said. "Lost half my tail rotor, swore I'd never do it again. And yet here we are. Here we are." They dropped below the ridge line. The canyon swallowed them. Rotor wash kicked up dust and fear in equal measure. "Reaper extraction flight inbound," Morrison called. "LZ still hot," Jen replied. "Heavy weapons East Ridge, I'll suppress, move fast." "Copy that." The helicopters flared into the basin, rotors clawing at thin air. Dust exploded upward. Rangers broke cover, dragging the wounded. Hayes and Trevor loaded Webb first. The kid wasn't conscious anymore. The DSHK opened up again. Rounds tore through dirt around the Blackhawks. One round punched clean through the fuselage, missing Tucker by inches. "We need to go," he shouted. "Not yet," Morrison said. "Not until everyone's aboard." Up above, Jen saw the heavy weapon still firing. She didn't hesitate. Dived full speed, no finesse, just rage. BRRRT. The gun position vanished. Sandbags, bodies, weapon, all erased in a storm of tungsten. She pulled up, barely clearing the ridge by 10 feet. Wind shear slammed her. The left engine coughed, oil pressure dropping. "Not yet," she whispered. "Not yet." The engine caught again. Below, Jason watched the helicopters lift, overloaded, straining but rising. For a moment, he believed it was over. Then tracers lanced up from the canyon's southern mouth. Reinforcements, technical trucks, mounted guns. The trailing Blackhawk took rounds through its tail, hydraulic lines severed. The bird spun, fighting gravity. "Mayday, mayday," the pilot shouted. It hit the ground hard, brutal but survivable, smoke rising. 9 souls stranded again. Morrison's voice cracked over the radio. "Nighthawk 2 is down, crew and passengers mobile, need immediate extraction." Holloway's voice came back, cold, professional. "Proceed to base. We'll organize secondary extraction." "They don't have 30 minutes, Morrison said. "That's in order." She bit back the words she wanted to say, banked north, and flew the wounded home. Jen watched the downed bird's crew scatter for cover. 9 people, exposed, enemy closing. She checked her gauges. Fuel 38%. Both engines unstable, hydraulics bleeding out. She made the call. "Cumberland Reaper. I'm staying with the downed crew, providing cover until secondary extraction." "Negative, Reaper. Fuel critical. Return to base." "There are 9 Americans down there, sir. I'm not leaving them." "Captain, that's a direct." She switched frequencies. Silence. From the ground, Captain Harold Driscoll, pilot of the downed Blackhawk, watched the A-10 circle above them like a guardian angel made of steel and defiance. He keyed his radio. "Any station, this is Nighthawk 2. We are down in the basin. 9 personnel, limited ammunition, requesting immediate support." Jen's voice came back through static and fury. "Nighthawk 2, this is Reaper. I've got you covered. Move to those rocks at your 10 o'clock, 200 meters. Move now." Driscoll didn't hesitate. "Move, move." They ran through dust and gunfire. The enemy saw them, opened up. Rounds snapped overhead like angry insects. Jen rolled in low. 1 passed, 2. Gunfire tore into the lead trucks. The first exploded. The second flipped, scattering bodies. Her right engine died mid-pullout. Temperature pegged in the red. She feathered the prop, coaxed life out of the left. Fuel 32%. Maybe 10 minutes of flight. She didn't care. She still had them in her sights. And they still had hope. In the operations center, Brett Reynolds stood motionless, fists tight at his sides. On the screen, Jen's Warthog limped through the canyon on one engine, smoke trailing. "Request permission to launch," he said. "Provide air support." "Denied," Holloway said. "The canyon's too dangerous. We're not risking another aircraft." "She's out there alone, sir. Running out of fuel, running out of options." "That was her choice." "With respect, sir," Reynolds said quietly, "that's bull. She's there because our system failed. She's covering for it with her life." Holloway didn't answer. Reynolds shook his head and walked out, the room too small for his anger. Dixon exhaled. "Sir, he's not entirely wrong." Holloway's gaze stayed fixed on the flickering image of Jen's dying aircraft. "No," he said softly, "he's not." Above Blackwater Canyon, thunder rolled again, not from the sky, but from the roar of a single, wounded plane refusing to quit. Down below, 9 Americans crawled through dust and blood, still breathing because somewhere up there, one pilot had decided that courage mattered more than permission. And as night began to fall over the Tennessee mountains, the echo of her engines didn't sound like war anymore. It sounded like mercy. How do you keep flying when everything you love is falling apart beneath you? The sun was low now, spilling long shadows across the ridges. The canyon glowed amber and red, a cathedral of stone and fire. And in its echoing silence, the A-10's last working engine coughed again, sputtering smoke. Captain Jennifer Carmichael adjusted her throttle, coaxing the bird like a dying friend. Every vibration told a story. She could feel the right engine's death throes through her bones, but the left, good old General Electric TF-34, still fought back. "Just hold it together a little longer," she whispered. "We're not done yet." Below her, the 9 survivors from the downed Blackhawk scrambled for cover, dust trailing their movements. She could see their heat signatures flicker on her FLIR display, tiny, fragile, alive. Beyond them, enemy trucks were repositioning, moving through the canyon floor. Too many. Her ammo counter blinked red, 200 rounds left. That wasn't firepower, that was a prayer. "Cumberland Actual, this is Reaper," she said, forcing calm into her voice. "Visual on enemy reinforcements moving north through canyon floor. Approximately 24 hostiles, 2 technicals, 1 mortar team. My ordnance is nearly expended. Recommend immediate extraction." The reply came through static, Holloway's voice. "Reaper copy. QRF scrambling from Delta Station. ETA 25 minutes. 25, she echoed. Her eyes flicked to the canyon floor. The enemy was less than a kilometer from the survivors. They don't have 25 minutes. "Reaper, we're doing what we can." She almost laughed. It was Holloway's fault, not this time. Logistics, distance, fuel, every system had limits. But out here, limits were the difference between life and a folded flag. She angled the A-10 into a slow turn, surveying the battlefield. 9 lives below, 20 plus closing in, fuel 28%, hydraulics failing. Her hands trembled slightly on the stick, not fear, fatigue, adrenaline fatting, muscles beginning to protest. "You've been here before," her mind whispered. That long night over coast, the valley on fire, the radio filled with screams, the voice that didn't make it home. Red's voice. He'd been her flight lead, mentor, brother in everything but blood. They trained together, deployed together, trusted each other with their lives. And on that last mission, he'd been the one hit by a shoulder-fired missile while trying to pull out of a dive. She'd watched his A-10 vanish in a bloom of smoke and silence. They said there was nothing she could have done, but she'd never believed that. Now, as her own aircraft limped through another canyon, she couldn't help hearing him again. "Fly low, trust the bird, don't think too much." She smiled faintly, still giving orders, huh? The engine shuddered, the instruments flickered, warnings filled the cockpit. "All right," she whispered, "let's give them something to remember." Down below, Captain Harold Driscoll wiped sweat and dust from his face. His team huddled behind a boulder the size of a truck, breath ragged, weapons hot. "Ammo?" he asked. 4 mags total, Specialist Vega said. 2 for me, 2 for Davis. The rest are empty. "Any comms?" "Negative, radio's fried." Driscoll looked up at the sky. The A-10's contrail wove faint silver across the canyon like a signature written in faith. "She's still up there," he murmured. Vega nodded, "Yeah, for now." In the operations center, the air was heavy with that particular kind of silence that only comes when everyone's pretending not to be afraid. Kayla Jensen stared at the satellite feed. A grainy thermal map showed 2 clusters of heat signatures, one small, one large, one alive, one hunting. "Sir, hostiles are closing on Nighthawk 2's crew. Less than 5 minutes." "Where's our QRF?" Holloway demanded. "Still 20 minutes out," Dixon said. "Raptors 1 and 2 are airborne but refueling. We can't get them on station before sunset." "What about indirect fire support?" "Out of range, sir. Nearest artillery battery is at Bragg." "So we have nothing." Except her, Dixon said quietly. Holloway looked at the screen, at the tiny moving shape above the canyon. Except her. The enemy trucks reached the basin mouth. 2 gunners climbed into the backs, mounting belt-fed weapons. Dust rose around them like smoke. Jen lined up a run. Targeting reticle locked, HUD flickering from electrical strain. She didn't bother calling it in, no time. Throttle full, dive angle 15 degrees. The sound of the GAU-8 spun up again, low, mechanical, angry. BRRRT. The first truck disintegrated. The second swerved, collided with a rock, exploded. Her ammunition counter hit 0. And then quiet. No rounds left, no missiles, no flares, just her, the dying bird, and a sky starting to burn orange. Reaper Winchester on ammo, she transmitted. I repeat, Winchester, I'm out of ordnance. Static answered her. Cumberland copy. Nothing. She switched frequencies. Nighthawk 2, this is Reaper, you're clear for now, stay low, reinforcements inbound. Driscoll's voice came back, rough but steady. Roger that, Reaper, appreciate the assist. What's your fuel state? Not great. How not great? Let's just say I'm running on faith and fumes. There was a pause, then quietly, copy that. Back at Cumberland, Kayla's console blinked. Sir, Reaper's transponder is unstable. We're losing telemetry. Try to boost the signal, Holloway ordered. I can't, it's interference from terrain. Patch me through to her direct frequency. Kayla nodded, hands shaking slightly as she rerouted comms. Channel open. Carmichael, Holloway said, voice low, almost personal. You need to get out, now, you've done enough. Not yet, sir. You're out of ammo, you're out of fuel. I can't ask you to. You didn't ask. Carmichael, listen to me. I grounded you because I thought you were reckless. I thought you were a risk to others, but I was wrong. You hear me? I was wrong. Her breath caught. She didn't respond right away. Sir, permission to speak freely. Granted. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about not leaving people behind. Then her voice softened, and it's about finishing what started long before this canyon. He closed his eyes, nodded to no one, then finish it. The last of the light faded behind the ridges. The world turned bronze, then gray, then almost black. Jen dropped altitude, barely 300 feet off the canyon floor. Her external lights were off, radar silent. Through her night vision goggles, the canyon became a world of ghosts, cold rock, hot metal, and human silhouettes glowing white in infrared. She saw them again, the survivors moving under cover, but farther north another shape caught her eye. A flare, then another. Enemy reinforcements signaling. Her chest tightened. They were marking her position. Seconds later, the first volley came, tracers arcing upward from the canyon edge. She yanked the stick. The A-10 lurched, metal groaning. A round tore through her right wingtip. Another slammed into the fuselage. Fuel warning screamed, pressure dropping. Come on, she whispered. The engine coughed again. Flames licked the exhaust. Reaper, this is Cumberland, Holloway's voice came faintly. You're hit, say intentions. She looked out over the canyon. 9 soldiers still moving. 2 enemy trucks closing again. The math was simple. I'm staying until they're clear. Carmichael, you can't land that thing in a canyon. No, she said quietly, but I can put it between them and the enemy. Don't do this, Holloway said. That's an order. She smiled faintly, tears stinging her eyes. You grounded me for breaking orders, remember. Then she cut the radio. Below, Driscoll and his crew reached the northern rocks, gasping for air. Vega turned back toward the open basin just in time to see it, her warthog descending, slow, deliberate, one engine burning. What is she? Driscoll stared, realization dawning. She's putting it down. Down where? Here. They dove for cover. The A-10 came in low, gear up, belly scraping stone. Sparks trailed behind like shooting stars. The roar filled the canyon, drowning every other sound. It hit the ground hard, metal shrieking, wings clipping rock, fragments tearing free. The aircraft skidded, bounced, slammed sideways into a ridge wall. Fire blossomed. For a second, the canyon went utterly still. Then someone yelled, "She's alive, I see movement." Through the smoke and fire, the canopy blew open. A silhouette emerged, helmet off, face streaked with soot and blood. Captain Jennifer Carmichael pulled herself free, stumbled, fell, then pushed back up. Driscoll sprinted toward her. "Reaper." She turned, half smiling despite the chaos. "Thought I'd drop in." He caught her arm, steadying her. "You're insane." "Been told that before." Behind them, the wrecked A-10 burned like a pyre. The heat washed across their faces. "Reinforcements will be here any second," she said. "We need to move." Driscoll nodded. "This way." They ran toward the shelter of the rocks. In the operations center, Kayla's screen flashed red. "Sir, we just lost Reaper's transponder." "Destroyed." "Confirmed." Holloway's hand clenched into a fist. He looked down for a moment, just long enough for his voice to go soft. "Godspeed, Carmichael." Then he straightened. "Get those birds moving. Now she bought them minutes, let's make them count." On the canyon floor, the survivors regrouped, breath ragged, clothes torn, faces streaked with dust and disbelief. Carmichael crouched beside Webb, checking for a pulse. Weak, but there. "You're gonna make it, kid," she whispered. Driscoll knelt beside her. "You saved us." She shook her head. "Not yet." In the distance, engines roared, the enemy closing again. "Everyone with ammo, find cover," she said, voice suddenly steady, commanding. "We hold until those birds get here." They obeyed, without question, because in that moment she wasn't just some pilot, she was the reason they were still breathing. She took a rifle from a fallen ranger, checked the chamber, nodded once. "All right," she muttered, "let's make Red proud." Back at Cumberland, Holloway's operations board lit up, 3 inbound contacts at high speed. "Sir, friendly transponders confirmed. QRF has reached visual range." "Patch me through," Holloway said. "This is Cumberland Actual. You have clearance to enter Blackwater Canyon. Watch for smoke markers. Friendly survivors on the ground." The pilot's voice came back sharp. "Copy that, we have visual on fire, moving in." On the canyon floor, Carmichael looked up. Headlights cutting through the dusk, rotor wash kicking up dirt. Relief flooded her chest, followed immediately by another sound. Mortar. The first round landed 20 meters away, throwing her to the ground. Ears ringing, vision blurring. Driscoll grabbed her arm. "You all right?" She blinked. Yeah. "Mortars are bracketing us. They're trying to walk it in." She could see the flashes now. Enemy team on the ridge. She raised the rifle, one breath too. Then she fired. The rifle cracked again and again, until the last round clicked empty. Silence. Then impact. The mortar team's position erupted in flames. The QRF birds had opened fire. She dropped the rifle, slumped against the rock. Driscoll knelt beside her. "You did it." "Not yet," she murmured. "Get your people on that bird." He hesitated. "What about you?" She smiled faintly, eyes glassy in the firelight. "I'll catch the next flight." 10 minutes later, as the Chinook lifted from the canyon, Holloway's radio cracked with static. "This is Guardian 1. Package secured. We have all survivors. Repeat, all survivors." Cheers broke out in the operations center. Holloway didn't cheer. He just exhaled, slow, deep, like someone who hadn't breathed in an hour. "Confirm Carmichael's status," he said. Silence. Then, negative visual on Reaper. He closed his eyes, understood. On the canyon floor, The flames from the A-10 flickered weaker now, the night wind scattering ash. Somewhere among the shadows, a figure moved, slow, limping, a silhouette against firelight. She wasn't done yet. Not while others still breathed. And not while she could still stand. Because sometimes the sky takes everything from you. And still, you find the strength to go back. Not for glory, not for orders. But because somewhere out there, someone needs to believe the impossible still matters. Why did the quiet feel louder than the war? Dawn crept slowly over Blackwater Canyon, pale light washing the charred ridges into gray and gold. Smoke still drifted in lazy spirals where her warthog had burned through the night. Every rock, every scrap of twisted metal looked like a piece of something sacred that the world had no right to touch. Captain Harold Driscoll leaned against the tail ramp of the Chinook that had come back at first light. The rotor blades hung motionless now, glinting in the sun. Medics moved carefully through the wreck site, collecting what was left of the night before. "Anything?" he asked the search techs. One of them shook his head. "Flight suit fragments, a helmet visor, some blood on the rock, that's it. No body." Driscoll nodded once. He didn't say what everyone was thinking. No body could mean two things, and only one of them was hope. He turned toward the ridge, eyes narrowing. Somewhere out there, she'd walked into darkness. Maybe dragged herself clear before the wreck exploded. Maybe not. Either way, she had bought them their lives with whatever was left of hers. The medic beside him, a young corporal, shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, the colonel says we need to move the remains for collection." Driscoll crouched, picked up a piece of scorched metal. It was part of a wing panel, the paint burned but still visible. 68. "Yeah," he said softly, "take it gently." At Cumberland, the base was already awake. Television crews, reporters, and officers in clean uniforms who hadn't been there the night before now filled the hallways. Holloway stood in his office, blinds half closed, eyes on the runway. He hadn't slept. His uniform looked pressed, but his face didn't. Lines carved deep, eyes rimmed red. On the desk lay two folders. One labeled After Action Report, the other Carmichael, Jennifer A. Status, missing presumed KIA. Major Dixon entered quietly, coffee in hand. "Sir, extraction team recovered everyone. All Rangers accounted for. 2 critical, stable. 1 pilot with a concussion but alive." "And her?" Holloway asked without turning. Dixon shook his head. "No remains, no signal beacon either. The beacon casing was destroyed in the crash." "So she just vanished." "Canyons deep. Lots of caves, river channels. It's possible she crawled clear." "Possible," Holloway repeated. Then, almost to himself, "She always did hate being predictable." Dixon set the coffee down and hesitated. "Sir, press wants a statement. Command's framing it as a heroic action leading to successful rescue. They'll probably decorate her posthumously." Holloway nodded slowly. "Posthumously. The word sounds clean, doesn't it?" "Sir, it means you get to praise someone when it doesn't cost you anything." Dixon didn't answer. There wasn't anything to say. At the base infirmary, the Rangers lay in neat rows of cots, IVs dripping, nurses moving like ghosts. Jason Daniels sat propped against a pillow, left arm in a sling, still not used to the sound of silence. Hayes sat beside him, bruised but grinning faintly. "You believe she made it?" Jason looked toward the window. Beyond the glass, the morning sun was catching on the flight line, on the empty spot where Thunderbolt 68 used to sit. "She survived worse," he said finally. "People like her don't go out easy." "Maybe." Hayes leaned back, closed his eyes. "All I know is, when that gun started singing, I thought we were dead men hearing heaven." Jason laughed once, then stopped. "You ever meet someone who does exactly what the rest of us wish we had the courage to do?" Hayes opened one eye. "You mean crazy?" "I mean honest," Jason said. "The kind of honest that costs something." Hours later, a storm rolled in from the west. Rain hit the base like pennants, washing the tarmac clean of dust and memory. Holloway stood outside Hangar 7, coat soaked through, watching water stream down the nose of an old maintenance jet. For the first time since the war began, he let himself whisper the truth aloud. She saved them because I wouldn't let her the first time. The words hung in the rain, small and heavy. 3 weeks passed. Blackwater Canyon returned to its quiet, crows circling above scorched rock, the river cutting its same slow line through stone. A search team combed the area again, this time on foot. Sergeant Myers led the patrol, flashlight sweeping through narrow caverns. "You sure this is the right sector?" "GPS says so," Corporal Dean replied. "Look, footprints, faint but fresh, boot tread military issue." Myers knelt, touching the prints, 2 weeks old, maybe less. They followed the trail another 100 meters, until the canyon opened into a shallow ravine, where a small camp lay tucked beneath an overhang. A burned ration pack, half a canteen, a torn sleeve with the name Carmichael barely legible. Dean exhaled. She made it out. "Maybe," Myers said. He scanned the horizon, "or she made it this far." They found no body, no blood, just evidence of someone who refused to quit. When the report reached Cumberland, Holloway read it twice. Then he closed the file, leaned back and smiled, not the smile of relief, but of something harder, older. Faith, maybe. "Sir," Kayla Jensen asked softly, standing at the door, "you think she's alive?" He looked up at her. "I think she's doing what she always did, finishing what she started." 2 months later, a humanitarian convoy was ambushed 30 kilometers east of the canyon. Local news carried the story briefly, no survivors expected. But at dusk, the convoy's satellite uplink transmitted an image: burnt trucks, smoke, and an A-10 silhouette carved against the clouds. No tail number, no markings. The feed cut after 10 seconds. When command reviewed the footage, they called it artifact distortion. Holloway didn't argue. He just saved the frame to his private drive and stared at it for a long time. Meanwhile, Jason Daniels walked across the parade ground at Cumberland for the last time. His shoulder was still stiff, but he wore his dress uniform clean and straight. The memorial ceremony was simple. A folded flag, 3 rifles, the sound of taps carried on the wind, a plaque with her name and the words: "For valor beyond duty, Captain Jennifer Carmichael, USAF." After the speeches, Jason stayed behind. The field emptied until only rain and memory kept him company. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small piece of gray metal, part of her plane, scorched but intact. He set it beneath the plaque. "You didn't follow orders," he said quietly. "You followed conscience, that's rarer." A voice behind him made him turn. "You knew her." It was Gloria Hutchkins, the old crew chief from Hangar 7. Her uniform sleeves were rolled, grease still on her hands. "Yeah," Jason said. "She saved my team." Gloria smiled sadly. "She saved a lot of people. Trouble is, the world only counts the ones they can put on paper." Jason nodded. "You think she's gone?" Gloria looked toward the horizon where the mountains met the clouds. "Pilots like her don't die, Lieutenant. They just stop needing permission to fly." That night, long after the base lights dimmed, the storm finally broke. Kayla sat alone in the comms room, sipping cold coffee, scrolling through archived transmissions. Most were routine logs, check-ins, tower reports, weather updates. Then she saw it, an unclassified ping from an emergency frequency, timestamped 3 hours earlier. Source unknown, content, Reaper 1 flight operational. She replayed it twice. The signal was weak, distorted, but unmistakably human. A woman's voice, low and tired. "Still here, not done yet." Then static. Kayla stared at the screen, heart pounding. She could have deleted it, could have called it interference. Instead, she copied the file, labeled it archive personal use, and whispered, Fly safe, ma'am. Months turned into a year. The world moved on. Medals were given, speeches made, missions planned. But sometimes, late at night, pilots flying low over the Appalachians reported hearing a voice over open comms, a calm female voice calling, "Reaper 1 on station." No one ever confirmed it, but in every ready room, someone always smiled when the rumor came up, because it meant the impossible still breathed. And if you ever visit Cumberland's memorial wall, you'll see something odd on Carmichael's plaque. A single set of pilot wings glued above her name, fresh, not weathered. No one ever saw who placed them there. But if you stand there at dawn, when the sun hits just right, you'll notice something else. The reflection of the wings catches the light like they're in motion, as if the sky itself refuses to let her rest. Some stories end with explosions. Hers ended with endurance, because sometimes the bravest thing a soldier does is keep breathing when no one expects her to. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts, quietly, completely, until the whole world finally understands what courage really sounds like. It sounds like an A-10 engine limping through the dawn. It sounds like one last promise kept. Why do some names fade, and others keep echoing long after the world stops listening? The Air Force investigation into the Blackwater incident, as they called it, began 11 days after the rescue. The report stretched over 312 pages, cross-referenced with satellite data, maintenance logs, and testimony from every survivor. But the first line said everything. Captain Jennifer A. Carmichael, USAF. Actions inconsistent with procedure, consistent with valor. They didn't know whether to court-martial her or canonize her. Colonel Holloway sat in a windowless room at Joint Command Headquarters in Arlington, the long table littered with coffee cups and contradiction. The panel of generals watched him in silence as he finished his statement. "In my professional opinion," Holloway said, voice steady but low, Captain Carmichael's decision to re-engage after being grounded violated protocol. But had she not done so, 19 Rangers and 9 aircrew would be dead. There is no ambiguity about that. A pause. A general with tired eyes leaned forward. "So she disobeyed orders and saved lives?" "Yes, sir." "Would you call her reckless?" Holloway looked down at his hands. "Only in the way conscience always is." That answer wasn't in the manual. They dismissed him 15 minutes later. As he left, one of the aides followed him into the hall. "Sir, what do you think really happened out there? Did she die in the crash?" He stopped walking. "I think she decided to stop asking for permission to do the right thing." The official verdict came 3 weeks later. Status: missing in action, presumed deceased. Recommendation: posthumous Silver Star. Disposition: closed. They wrapped it up like a wound they didn't want to see. Jason Daniels returned home to Georgia in early spring. The air was different there, too soft, too quiet. Sometimes he woke in the middle of the night, still hearing the GAU-8's growl, still feeling dust in his lungs. His daughters would run into the room, jumping onto his bed. "Daddy, you're home." He'd smile, hold them close, tell them he was fine, and for a few minutes he almost believed it. But when the lights went out and the house went silent, the memory of that canyon returned. Every flash, every scream, every echo. He'd see her face through the canopy glass, illuminated by the firelight as she made that final dive. Calm, certain. He'd whisper into the dark, "You did it, ma'am. You saved us all." His wife, Lena, noticed the change in him, the long silences, the distant gaze. One night she found him sitting on the porch, staring at the stars. "You're somewhere else again," she said softly. He nodded. "I keep wondering if I should have stopped her, tried to talk her down." "She wouldn't have listened," Lena said. Jason smiled faintly. "Yeah, that's what makes her her." At Cumberland, Kayla Jensen was promoted to staff sergeant. Her commendation mentioned exceptional composure under operational stress. She framed it but never hung it. Instead, she kept the old headset she'd worn the night of the ambush, duct tape on the cord, worn padding, faint smell of sweat and adrenaline. Every now and then, when the room was empty, she'd put it on, switch to channel 19, the frequency Carmichael used, and just listen. Once at 2:17 a.m., the line came alive for 3 seconds. Still flying low. Then static. Kayla never reported it. She didn't need to. Some things were meant to stay between frequencies. Brett Reynolds didn't stay in the Air Force. He resigned 6 months after the hearing. The official reason was career redirection. The real reason was that he couldn't walk past Hangar 7 without hearing her voice in his head. They'd trained together for 5 years. He'd watched her fly her first combat sortie. He'd watched her come back bleeding from a broken canopy, but still smiling. He'd watched her grounded for doing exactly what he wished he'd had the nerve to do. After he left the service, he bought a small flight school near Tucson, old Cessnas, peeling paint, desert wind that whistled through the hangar doors. The kind of place where he could breathe again. But sometimes, when the air was still and the sun dropped low, he'd swear he saw it. A dark silhouette cutting through the western sky, flying lower than anything had the right to. He never told anyone. He just nodded, whispered, "Good to see you, Jen," and went back to work. 1 year to the day after Blackwater, a memorial event was held at Cumberland. Flags, speeches, the same safe words everyone says when they're trying to make sense of something that isn't supposed to make sense. Holloway spoke last. No notes, no script, just memory. "She was difficult," he began. "She questioned everything. She broke rules. She made enemies. And she saved more lives than any of us ever will." He looked over the crowd. Uniforms, civilians, families. "You can call that insubordination," he continued quietly. "Or you can call it leadership. The kind that doesn't wait for permission. The kind that comes from somewhere deeper than training. Somewhere human." He paused. "She taught me something I was too proud to admit then, that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the refusal to let fear decide." When he finished, there was silence. Not applause, just quiet, the kind that means people are thinking. Afterward, Jason approached him, saluted. "Sir, I wanted to say thank you for how you spoke about her." Holloway returned the salute. "She earned every word." Jason hesitated. "Do you believe she's gone?" Holloway looked at the horizon, where the sun was setting over the runway. "I believe some souls belong to the sky, and when they go, they don't fall, they just climb until we can't see them anymore." That night, Holloway went back to his office. The base was quiet again. On his desk sat the only photo he had of her, a candid shot from 2 years earlier, taken after a routine flight. Carmichael was sitting on the wing of her A-10, helmet under one arm, hair coming loose from her bun, laughing at something the photographer had said. He stared at it for a long time. Then he whispered, "You were right." The room's lights flickered once. Probably a surge. But for a moment he could have sworn he heard it. The faint hum of an engine, the whisper of turbines, the sound that had haunted him since that day. It was gone as soon as it came. 3 months later, deep in a desert no one had reason to visit, a convoy of refugees crossed the border under fire. The escort unit was wiped out. No air cover, no comms. But a satellite pass caught something strange. A single aircraft, low and fast, moving through the canyon like a ghost. Heat signature matched an A-10. No transponder, no call sign. 2 gun runs, precise, controlled, enemy convoy destroyed, refugees survived. By the time rescue arrived, the aircraft was gone. No tracks, no radar echo. The analysts logged it as an unidentified friendly asset. Holloway saw the report. He didn't forward it. He just smiled quietly and whispered to no one, still flying low. The legend spread. Pilots began calling her the ghost of Blackwater. Rangers passed the story down to new recruits about the woman who broke orders to save them all. Every version changed something. Some said she walked out of the canyon barefoot, others that she lived off the land for months before vanishing. But the part that never changed was the ending. When everything failed, when command froze, when hope ran out, she flew anyway. Jason Daniels returned to base 2 years later for a speaking event. He hated speeches, but this one mattered. He stood on stage before a crowd of cadets, most barely old enough to remember the war. He told them about courage, about duty, about how easy it is to confuse one for the other. And then he told them about her. She didn't follow orders that day, he said. She followed something older, something you can't write into a manual. You'll know it when it happens. It'll scare you, and it'll make you more alive than you've ever been. Afterward, a young cadet approached him, nervous, respectful. "Sir, do you think she was a hero?" Jason smiled faintly. "Heroes die. Legends teach you how to live." That night flying home, Jason looked out his window as the clouds broke over the Appalachians. For a split second, just a flicker, he saw something move beneath them. A shadow, low and fast, skimming the ridgelines. He leaned closer to the glass, heart suddenly pounding. Then it was gone. He laughed under his breath, shaking his head. "Yeah," he whispered, "still watching over us." Because some battles don't end when the shooting stops. They end when someone finally understands why it was fought. And for Jennifer Carmichael, the fight was never about orders or rank or medals. It was about something smaller and bigger all at once. The choice to stand between death and the people who still had something left to live for. The choice to keep flying when the world told her to land. And somewhere, above the canyons where thunder still echoes off stone, if you listen just right, you'll hear it. Not gunfire. Not war. Just that deep, steady growl of an A-10 engine. And a voice whispering through the static. Still flying low. How do you move on from someone the world says is gone, when every instinct tells you she is? Rain swept across the Cumberland flight line again, just like that night a year ago. The kind of cold, steady rain that makes metal whisper and men remember. Major Brett Reynolds stood in the hangar doorway, coffee in one hand, silence in the other. The smell of jet fuel, damp asphalt, and ghosts clung to the air. He hadn't been back here in months, too many memories, too much noise in the quiet. But something had brought him back tonight, a message, unsigned, printed on plain paper and slipped under his door in Tucson. 3 words. She made it. He told himself it was a prank or wishful thinking. But still, he'd driven 8 hours straight, boarded a hop flight east, and walked through the same base gates where her name was carved in bronze. He stared out at the empty tarmac, lightning splitting the horizon, and whispered, "If you're out there, give me a sign." As if in answer, thunder rolled overhead, deep and slow, the kind of thunder that almost sounded like turbines. Hundreds of miles away, in a small border town carved into dry hills, an aid worker named Sofia Vega checked her supply list by lantern light. The power had been out for 3 days. Refugees lined the edge of the compound, families displaced by another nameless fight. She closed her logbook, rubbed her eyes. Outside, someone was shouting in Spanish, panic in the voice. Vehicles coming from the west. Vega stepped outside. Headlights burned through the darkness, 4 trucks loaded with men, weapons glinting. "Inside, everyone inside," she yelled. The children ran first. The old followed. Vega ducked behind a wall, heart slamming against her ribs. The trucks fanned out, engines idling. Armed silhouettes jumped down, shouting orders she couldn't understand. Then a new sound cut through the chaos, low, distant, growing fast. A hum that became a roar. Someone shouted, "Avion." The first truck exploded before Vega could even blink. Then another. Then the air filled with the thunderclap rhythm of something mechanical, relentless. BRRRT. The gunfire wasn't wild, it was surgical. When the dust cleared, the trucks were wreckage and the attackers scattered. And in the dark sky above the desert, a shadow passed once low, slow, steady. No lights, no markings, just the silhouette of a warthog moving through the clouds. Vega stood frozen, her heart caught between awe and disbelief. She'd been an interpreter once, attached to a ranger unit years earlier. She knew that sound. A-10, she whispered, but there's no base within 300 miles. When she reported it later, the local commander called it impossible. No active sorties. Must have been a mirage, heat distortion. You were under stress. She nodded, pretending to agree. But that night, as she lay awake, she remembered the way the aircraft banked before disappearing, like it was watching to make sure they were safe. At Cumberland, Staff Sergeant Kayla Jensen sat in the darkened comms room, eyes on the soft glow of her monitor. She had been assigned to another unit months ago, but she always checked the emergency frequencies before her shift ended. And tonight at 02:46 hours, it happened again. A faint, distorted transmission flickered onto the line. April 1, mission complete, returning to base. Kayla froze, adjusted the filters, the signal sharpened. Low visibility systems holding, still flying low. Then static. She leaned forward, heart hammering. Reaper 1, this is Cumberland Operations. Identify, over. No response. She repeated it twice more, nothing. Finally, she sat back, staring at the waveform still blinking on her screen. It wasn't an echo. It wasn't old data. The timestamp was live. Still flying low, she whispered. You're out there, aren't you? She copied the file to a private drive again, the second in 6 months, and saved it under a single word: proof. Colonel Holloway knew about the transmissions. He'd known for months. Kayla hadn't been as discreet as she thought. But he never reprimanded her, never asked her to stop. Because he'd been listening too. Every time one came through, he'd sit in his office alone, door locked, lights dim, headset pressed to his ear. Sometimes it was just static, sometimes the faint whine of engines. Once, a whisper of a woman's voice saying, "Not done yet." Each time it ended the same way. Silence and the feeling that somewhere above the clouds, the sky still belonged to her. Jason Daniels received his proof differently. He'd gone back to the canyon. He said it was to visit the memorial site, but his wife knew better. There were things a man couldn't leave buried. He hiked down into the basin where the wreck had once burned. The riverbed had shifted since that day. Nature was reclaiming what war left behind. He reached the old crash zone just before sunset. The metal fragments were mostly gone now, collected by search teams or swallowed by the earth. But the smell, burnt oil and old rain, lingered faintly. He knelt, brushed dirt off a piece of twisted steel. For a long while he just stared. Then he noticed something carved into the rock beside the impact site. At first he thought it was erosion, but when the light hit right, he saw it clearly. 68 still flying low. His breath caught. He touched the letters, fingers tracing the grooves. The cuts were sharp, deliberate, made by someone alive. Someone who'd been here. He looked out across the canyon, eyes stinging. "You made it," he whispered. "You crazy, stubborn woman, you made it." The wind rose suddenly, funneling through the stone walls, carrying a faint, mechanical hum that faded as quickly as it came. Jason smiled. "Yeah," he said softly, "I hear you." A month later, Holloway was invited to a conference in D.C., another panel about leadership, crisis, and accountability. He hated these things, but he went. The questions were the same. How do you maintain control in chaos? What do you do when subordinates break command structure? He answered politely, predictably, until one young officer asked, "Sir, What do you do when doing the right thing means disobeying orders? The room went quiet. Everyone waited. Holloway leaned on the podium, his voice low, steady. Then you better be sure of your heart, because once you make that choice, there's no going back. He paused, eyes distant. But sometimes, that choice is what saves everyone else. When the session ended, an aide handed him a sealed envelope. This arrived for you, sir. No return address. He opened it later in his hotel room. Inside was a small photograph, grainy, taken from a satellite feed. An A-10 flying low. Tail number blurred, but on the fuselage, barely visible, were two painted words, Reaper 1. No coordinates, no message. Just proof that some stories never end. Brett Reynolds found his proof too, in a way he hadn't expected. He was flying a student over the desert in a Cessna 182 when the kid pointed at something on the horizon. Sir, is that an A-10? Reynolds squinted. Far out against the dying light, a silhouette moved, wings straight, profile unmistakable. The kid laughed. Can't be. Closest base is 3 hours away. But Reynolds didn't laugh. He knew that shape. It banked once, slow and deliberate, passing above them by maybe 500 feet. No markings, no lights, just the ghost of a sound that made his chest tighten, that steady, familiar rumble. He keyed his radio instinctively. Reaper, this is Ghost Lead. You reading me? Static, then faint, almost a whisper. Good to see you, Brett. He froze. The student looked at him, confused. What'd she say? Reynolds didn't answer. Couldn't. He just watched the silhouette disappear into the dusk, his eyes wet, his heart thundering. She's alive, he murmured. My God, she's alive. Weeks passed, then months. But the sightings didn't stop. Aid workers in conflict zones, rangers on patrol in remote valleys, even a group of mountain climbers who swore they'd seen an unmarked plane circle them during a blizzard, dropping flares to guide a rescue team that arrived hours later. Every report ended the same way. No trace, no call sign, no confirmation. Only the sound, that unmistakable growl of a warthog's engines fatting into the wind. At Cumberland, the brass moved on, but Holloway didn't. He retired quietly that spring, packed his office, and left one thing behind, her flight patch, pinned to the wall with a note that simply read, "She was right." Kayla found it when she took over his office. She left it there. Some truths don't need new names. That summer, a new pilot reported to base, Lieutenant Elena Carmichael. No one paid attention to the last name at first. The Air Force is full of coincidences. But Kayla noticed. When the young woman came to the comms desk to sign in, Kayla asked gently, "Any relation to Captain Jennifer Carmichael?" The girl smiled, the same quiet, disarming smile she'd seen once in a photo on Holloway's desk. "Yes, ma'am, my mother." Kayla froze. "But your records?" "She was MIA, Elena said softly. "Not KIA, big difference." Kayla's throat went dry. "You mean she?" Elena's eyes glimmered, proud and private. "She lived long enough to raise me right. Then she winked, and to teach me how to fly low." That night after duty, Kayla walked out onto the flight line. The sky was clear, stars scattered like flares across black velvet. She could almost hear it, that old, familiar hum rolling through memory. And she thought, maybe some legends don't disappear. Maybe they pass themselves forward like a torch, or a flight plan written in blood and belief. She smiled, whispering to the wind, still flying low. Somewhere far beyond sight, thunder answered back. Because courage isn't about surviving the war. It's about what you leave behind when it's over. The echo of an engine. The mark on a stone. The daughter who carries your name into the next sky. How do you live in the shadow of a ghost, especially when the ghost is your mother? Lieutenant Elena Carmichael sat in the cockpit of her training jet, canopy open, the early light spilling across the flight line. The Tennessee horizon glowed faintly pink, the air still cool before the day's heat took over. She should have been focused on pre-flight checks. Instead, her eyes lingered on the distant ridges, the same ridges her mother vanished into almost 2 decades ago. The tower's voice crackled through her headset. "Raven 1, you're cleared for taxi." "Copy, Tower," she replied, tone crisp but distant. Her instructor, Captain Ortiz, climbed up the ladder, leaned on the canopy edge. "You ready, Carmichael?" She nodded, "Always." He studied her a second longer. "You don't talk much, do you?" "Talking doesn't keep a jet in the air, sir." He smiled faintly. "You sound like someone I used to know." She glanced up. "You flew with her, didn't you?" Ortiz hesitated. "We all did once. Jennifer Carmichael, Reaper 1. Best damn A-10 pilot I ever saw." Elena turned back to her instruments, voice soft. "Everyone has a version of her. I'm still trying to find the real one." Ortiz stepped back, his expression unreadable. "Then you're in the right sky for it." Later in the ready room, Elena studied the faded memorial photo on the wall, her mother, sitting on the wing of her warthog, smiling like she had a secret no one else could understand. Beneath the frame, someone had taped a small card that read, "Still flying low." She'd seen that phrase her entire life, on plaques, in stories, on t-shirts worn by men who'd once owed their lives to it. It had become legend. But legends had a habit of erasing the people behind them. She wanted the truth, the full, unfiltered human truth about who her mother was before the myth took over. So that night, long after the hangar lights dimmed, she slipped into the records room. The air was thick with the smell of paper and time. She keyed in her clearance code, accessed the restricted archives labeled Blackwater Canyon Incident, classified debrief. Half the files were still redacted. But one folder caught her eye, recovered evidence log 4B68. She opened it. Inside were scanned photos, fragments of fuselage, terrain markers, coordinates, and one final entry, a note from Colonel Richard Holloway, dated 2 years after her mother's disappearance. Unconfirmed reports of A-10 sightings persist in the region. Recommend maintaining operational silence. For what it's worth, I believe she lived. Her pulse quickened. She scrolled further. Attached was an audio file, labeled simply, Reaper 1 transmission recovered. Hands trembling, she pressed play. Static, then a woman's voice, faint but clear. "If anyone finds this, tell them I'm not gone, just flying lower." The voice cracked halfway through, distorted by time and interference, but unmistakable. Her breath hitched. She reached for her notebook, writing the coordinates embedded in the metadata. Blackwater Canyon. The same place it all began. 2 weeks later, she took leave. Officially, she was visiting family in Georgia. Unofficially, she was heading to the one place her mother had disappeared into, and if the whispers were true, never quite left. The canyon hadn't changed much. Wind howled through the rocks, and the river still wound its slow way through silence. She parked her rental truck near the overlook and hiked down alone. Each step crunched through gravel and memory. At the base, she found what the maps didn't show, a narrow ravine branching off from the crash site. The same place the search teams had never fully explored because of unstable rock. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness. The air smelled of dust and rusted metal. Then something caught the light, a small glint half buried in silt. She knelt, brushed it clean. A metal tag, scratched, dented. The words barely legible. Carmichael J.A. Her throat tightened. She turned it over on the back, engraved faintly, almost worn away. "Keep flying low." She sat there for a long time, the canyon wind carrying the soft hum of memory. Then faintly she heard it. Not wind, not thunder. A deep, distant roar, mechanical, deliberate, echoing off the stone walls like a heartbeat that refused to stop. She stood scanning the sky, nothing visible. But the sound lingered. And somewhere inside she knew. She wasn't the only Carmichael who'd come back to the canyon. At the same hour, hundreds of miles away, Kayla Jensen sat in her new post at Langley, staring at her console. Another transmission, no call sign, no traceable origin. Just a voice, older now, weathered by years of distance and grit. Tell the kid she flies like she means it. Kayla froze, typed quickly. Identify, is this Reaper 1? Static. Then, she doesn't need me anymore. And silence. Kayla sat back, staring at the line of code where the signal had blinked out. Tears welled, unbidden. She whispered to the dark screen, she'd be proud, ma'am, she'd be proud. Weeks later, back at Cumberland, a training exercise went wrong over the smoky foothills. One jet went dark, electrical failure. No navigation, no comms, fuel running low. Tower lost contact. The weather turned fast, crosswinds, rain, zero visibility. Ortiz's voice cut across the emergency channel, urgent. Raven 1, this is control. Pull up to 5,000, you're too low. No response. Raven 1, do you copy? Nothing but static. They prepared for impact protocol, coordinates ready for search and rescue. Then out of nowhere, another voice joined the channel. Calm, firm, familiar. Raven 1, this is Reaper. Follow my lead. The tower froze. Ortiz looked at the controller. Who the hell? Adjust heading 242. Drop altitude 300. Trust me, kid. Ortiz grabbed the mic. Reaper, identify yourself. Silence. Then, not my first storm. Radar confirmed it, a second blip, appearing out of nowhere beside Elena's jet. Ortiz shouted into the headset, Raven 1, who's with you? Elena's voice came through, shaky but steady. I don't know, sir, but they're flying formation. What type of aircraft? She glanced out her canopy. Through rain and cloud she saw it. Gray, old, scarred, wings broad and slow. An A-10. No markings, no lights. The other aircraft held formation perfectly, guiding her through the storm, banking left, climbing just enough to clear the ridge. Then the clouds broke, sunlight spilling through like a benediction. Raven 1, you're clear, the voice said softly. And then it was gone. No radar signature, no trace. When Elena landed, she climbed out of her jet shaking. Ortiz ran to meet her. What the hell happened up there? She looked at him, eyes wide, tears cutting tracks through the sweat and grime on her face. She saved me, Elena said quietly. Who? Elena looked back toward the horizon. You already know. That night, Elena went to Hangar 7. The lights were dim, the air thick with the smell of fuel and memory. She ran her hand along the nose of an old A-10 parked at the back, decommissioned, stripped for parts, but still standing proud. The name under the canopy was barely legible. Capt. Jennifer A. Carmichael. She whispered, you found me first, didn't you? And for a moment, just a moment, she could have sworn the air moved. A faint echo, the hum of turbines winding down, the heartbeat of an aircraft that wasn't supposed to breathe anymore. She smiled, hand resting against the cold metal. I'll keep it flying, Mom. A few days later, Colonel Holloway received a package with no return address. Inside, a single flash drive, no note. He loaded it onto a secure terminal. A single video file opened. Grainy, night vision footage of a desert plain. The camera panned upward, an A-10 moving across the stars. Then a voice, unmistakable. Tell Holloway the sky's still mine. The feed cut out. He sat back, laughing softly through tears he didn't bother to hide. Yeah, he whispered, it always was. Sometimes legends die in battle. Sometimes they fade in peace. And sometimes, if they're stubborn enough, they find a way to outfly both. The world would never officially confirm the existence of the ghost of Blackwater. But every pilot who ever heard her voice in the static carried it like armor, a reminder that courage doesn't always obey orders. And now, when young aviators took off from Cumberland, they had a new call sign to whisper for luck. Reaper watching. Because legacy isn't just about bloodlines or medals. It's about echoes, the kind that keep you honest when the sky turns black. And somewhere above the clouds, two warthogs flew in silent formation, one real, one remembered. Mother and daughter, bound by the same truth. You don't fly to be seen. You fly so no one else has to fall. What do you do when the story you've lived your whole life suddenly belongs to everyone else? The documentary crew arrived first, civilian contractors, cameras humming, voices full of reverence and curiosity. They were here to film a memorial special, The Ghost of Blackwater, 20 years later. Lieutenant Colonel Elena Carmichael watched them from the edge of the airfield, arms crossed, wind tugging at her flight suit. She had agreed to appear, reluctantly. The base commander had insisted. People deserve to see how legends become legacy. She wasn't sure legends deserved anything. A producer jogged over, polite but efficient. "Ma'am, if we could get a quick statement about your mother, what she means to you, to the Air Force." Elena smiled the way trained officers do when their hearts are somewhere else. "She means we still have work to do." The producer blinked, waiting for more. None came. The camera crews packed up by noon. By sunset, only the base hum of generators remained. Elena walked the perimeter road alone, following the familiar path toward Hangar 7. The old structure had been repainted, reinforced, and half converted into a museum space now, but it still smelled the same: oil, metal, ghosts. Inside, the centerpiece display waited, fragments of Thunderbolt 68 reconstructed around a hollow frame. The canopy glass was new, polished, sterile. The nameplate beneath read, "Cap Jennifer A. Carmichael, Reaper 1, Valor Beyond Duty." Spotlights made it gleam, too perfect, too quiet. Elena reached out and touched the cold metal. For years, she'd imagined this moment would feel like closure. Instead, it felt like standing on the threshold of a secret that refused to end. She whispered, "You still out there?" The lights flickered once, probably nothing, maybe everything. Outside, rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder. Elena stepped into it, tilting her face upward. The sky above Cumberland roared with distant thunder, the kind that vibrated in her chest. Her radio crackled. "Raven 1, this is Tower. You still on the line?" She keyed her mic. "Affirmative, Tower, just clearing the ramp." "Copy, strange interference on open comm. Some kind of ghost signal pinging Channel 9. You hearing that?" "Negative." "All right, disregard, probably weather." She smiled, "Probably." Then she switched her headset to Channel 9. Static hissed, rhythmic, almost like breathing. She listened for a full minute. Nothing. Then faintly, so faintly she might have imagined it, came a voice. "You fly higher than I ever did." Her breath caught. "Mom." Static swallowed the word. She stood there, rain soaking her hair, heart thudding. "You said you'd keep flying low." The static pulsed once. "Low isn't about altitude. It's about remembering why you fly." And then the channel went dead. A week later, orders came down. Elena Carmichael was being reassigned to forward operations training in Nevada, fast-tracking her to command track. She packed her gear in silence. Before leaving, she visited one last place, the memorial wall near the control tower. Dozens of names, polished brass, decades of sacrifice. Her mother's plaque sat near the center. Someone, she guessed Kayla Jensen, had taped a folded note beneath it. She opened it. "If courage had a sound, it would be the BRRRT that saved us all. Fly safe wherever you are. J.D. Jason Daniels, still keeping promises." She smiled, tucked the note into her pocket, and whispered, "Thank you." 2 months into her Nevada posting, the base received a strange request from NATO Command. Unidentified aircraft assisting convoy in northern range. No call sign. No authorization. Flight characteristics match A-10 variant. Recommend investigation. Elena read the report twice. The coordinates matched no known route, but she recognized the pattern in the telemetry. Altitude low. Speed slow. Signature Reaper. That night she filed a volunteer recon request. Weather calibration flight, she called it. It was approved. At 500 she took off alone. The desert stretched endless below, painted gold by sunrise. Halfway through her run, her radar pinged. A contact, small, steady, approaching head-on. Unidentified aircraft, this is Raven 1 USAF. Identify. Silence. Then 2 clicks of a mic, old-school acknowledgement. She squinted through the glare, searching. Then she saw it. Gray silhouette, twin engine, straight wings. Her heart stopped. "Thunderbolt 68, she whispered. The plane leveled alongside her, close enough she could see the patchwork of repairs, the unpainted scars along its body. The cockpit canopy was dark, but she felt it, the presence. For a long moment, neither aircraft spoke. They just flew. 2 generations, same blood, same sky. Then the older Warthog banked slightly, angling toward the mountains. Her headset came alive. "Stay your course, Raven. The sky's yours now." The voice was older, rasped by time but steady. "Mom," Elena whispered. "Don't follow, just remember why." The Warthog climbed into the light, turning east until it became a glint, then a speck, then nothing. Her radar went blank. Elena kept flying until the tears blurred everything. She never filed the encounter. No one would have believed it. But from that day on, every sortie she flew carried the same ritual. Before takeoff, she'd whisper, "Reaper, watching." And she'd feel the air hum in response. Years later, at a military academy in Colorado, cadets still told the story of the pilot who disobeyed orders to save a platoon in a canyon. They debated whether she lived, whether her daughter really saw her again, whether ghosts could fly. And every time a thunderstorm rolled across the mountains, instructors had to raise their voices over the low, distant rumble that always sounded, just faintly, like an A-10 diving through cloud. Colonel Kayla Jensen retired the following spring. At her farewell ceremony, a young communications officer handed her a weathered envelope with no return address. Inside was a patch black background, silver lettering. Reaper 1 still flying low. Kayla laughed, half crying as she pinned it to her jacket. "Guess some channels never close," she said. Jason Daniels grew older, slower, but he never forgot. On the 20th anniversary of Blackwater, he took his grandsons to the canyon overlook. "This is where she saved us," he told them. One of the boys frowned. "Did you ever see her again?" Jason looked out at the endless rock and sky. "Every time it storms," he said. At Cumberland, the museum added one final plaque beside Jennifer's wreckage. It read simply, "Legacy Flight Program dedicated in memory of Cap Jennifer A. Carmichael, Reaper 1. Because the mission never ends when one pilot stops flying." Beneath it hung a photo, Elena Carmichael standing beside her jet, hand resting on her mother's name. One night years later, a radar technician at an air defense outpost in Arizona logged an anomaly, an aircraft appearing at low altitude, crossing restricted airspace, then vanishing. He leaned toward his screen. "Sir, we've got an unidentified bogey, speed 250, altitude 300 feet, profile looks like an weight that can't be right. It's an A-10. His supervisor frowned. "There are no A-10s scheduled tonight." The tech turned. "Then what is it?" The older man stared at the blip, smiled faintly. something the system not built to track. When they looked again, the radar was clean. Outside, thunder rolled once, long and low. Somewhere above that desert, under a moon the color of mercy, two contrails crossed briefly before fatting. One belonged to a pilot carrying a legacy, the other to a promise kept. Neither left a name behind. Only the sound. That low, unwavering hum of engines doing what hearts sometimes forget to. Keep going. Because war ends but duty doesn't. Orders fade but purpose endures. And love, real, relentless, wordless love, it just keeps flying lower and lower, until it becomes part of the wind itself. When people ask what happened to Captain Jennifer Carmichael, they argue details, records, sightings, probabilities. But those who were there know better. They know that sometimes the bravest souls don't die. They simply trade their voices for thunder. And when that thunder passes overhead, echoing through the valley she once saved, it carries a message the world will never fully hear but will always somehow understand. Still flying low,